an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Grey Sister, chapters 17 through 23. In these chapters, it turns out that Nona has been set up. Abbey's glass has been too, but mostly it's Nona's fault. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Martin for commissioning this episode. Martin's in the chat and says, I might not talk much. I'm at work on a night shift. Martin, I'm sorry that these scheduling changes are inconveniencing people. I'm glad you're here, though. Appreciate you. These chapters did not go how I expected, y'all. At all. I should have fucking seen this coming. I should have realized that this, vicious, spiteful girl who keeps on mentioning to Nona about how she's, failing her friend isn't just doing that because she wants to emotionally torment her. She's doing it because she's trying to get a very specific reaction out of her. And I am disgusted that I didn't think of it. I really thought that it was just the actual, emotion that she wanted. But Joeli is a spoiled brat who we know is not above lying, not above setting, she drank a potion in order to make it look as if Nona had strangled her. I should have realized that she is the type to have a much more concrete goal than just making Nona's life miserable. And that she would have teamed up with people. I should have known. I don't know what's the matter with me. So, we start off these chapters. We still haven't figured out that that's what's going on yet. Obviously, that happens towards the middle of this section. It turns out, full 7 days of most of the class not being able to eat. If you remember the shade trial that Nona just embarked on, everybody's failure to stop her from getting to the tree, getting to the box was bad enough, but they also made a bunch of incorrect calls before she ever got to the tree, which each resulted in missing a meal. So this is just a really bad time for everybody. This is such a long period of punishment that the abbess actually capitulates a little bit and is like, all right, look, on 7th day they can eat, because she realizes that maybe this is going to do a little bit too much harm. It's supposed to be a deterrent. It's not supposed to literally hurt people. Of course, at this point, Sister Wheel has a oh, right. Martin says, apart from Darla and Zoli. Nona, Darla, and Zoli are the only ones that get to eat. And Sister Wheel devotes this entire, missive to the sin of pride. Because she thinks that Nona must really be feeling herself for succeeding here. This is an interesting thing that it seems Abbey's glass is also low-key concerned about. And I had said something last episode about Abbey actually says it won't do her any harm to lose for once, And her saying that, I was kind of like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But later when Nona's talking to her, Nona thinks to herself that Abbey's glass doesn't seem to realize that as far as Nona is concerned, her friends' deaths are the failure. And that is not something she will ever get over. So she is concerned with much greater things than like getting an A in a class. And it's weird that the abbess seems to be worried Nona is falling victim to pride in this regard, when Nona, more than anybody, has been in peril of her life. Like, more than anybody in this entire, other than maybe Joeli. The idea, really, when you step back and look at it, that somebody like Nona, who has gone through what she has, who has been targeted very specifically the way that she has, would start to get a little overconfident. I mean, yes, she has managed to come out on the winning side of things, but that she has lost 2 friends, and the abbess disfigured her hand for one of those opportunities. I feel like she isn't giving Nona the credit she deserves for her sensitivity to the overall price that she's paying. Nona isn't a spoiled, talented, and gifted child who feels entitled, you know? In other words, she isn't like I was when I was 10 or 11 years old. Nona has suffered some of the worst, Nona's loss. Nona being hurt is of less consequence to her than her friends being hurt. And it's sort of funny that the abbess does seem to understand Nona and her attachment to her friends in so many ways, but still doesn't really understand this mindset that she has. And she follows it up with, but I understand you wanting to pursue justice, and we have to try and pursue justice within the system, even if it feels that the system is broken. So there is a sort of follow-up of I know what you're thinking and that you want to avenge your friend, but I just don't feel like she truly understands how aware Nona is of what's at stake. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Sister Apple devoted 2 lessons to a dissection of Nona's tactics in the trial, keeping the resentful focus of the class on the origin of their distress. Yikes. And let's see, the box is there to teach a lesson. Its secret is revealed when sisters take the gray. We will need a new way to teach that lesson now, at least for enough years to outlast the convent's memory. It's there to teach sisters of discretion that whilst there is a time to be subtle, a time for stealth, deception, and the lightest touch, there is also always when the seconds are running out and we come to the sharp end of things, the possible need for violent and direct action. Never be so focused on picking a lock that you forget kicking down the door is also an option. And I really like that, and it's something that I think I should keep in mind as well. There are times where you just get so focused on the little details that you lose track of what overall you are trying to accomplish. And sometimes those little details, once you look at it, aren't actually the thing. But you get so wrapped up in them that you forget there's other ways to accomplish what you want. So I liked that. So then Sister Tala talks about the ice trial. She says, Sister Egg will be staying with us for 4 weeks to instruct you on surviving the ice. You'll need more than range coats and convent shoes out there. You'll need to learn the 9 basic types of snow, how to spot and traverse a crevasse, how to build shelters, cook food. 4 weeks will just scratch the surface. More novices have died on the ice trial than any other, so pay attention. Even if you take the ordeal of the shield, you will have Sister Rose on hand to try to fix whatever holes might get put through you. On the ice, you will be alone, no matter how many novices are with you. So, this is interesting because, as we know, later on, Nona winds up out on her own. And I have to be honest, by the time this chapter or this section wraps, we don't see anybody, but Nona seems to be convinced that all of her friends are still at the convent, are still living their ordinary lives. She even talks about how she bets that, like, that Ara? Yeah. Ara? Why am I forgetting her name all of a sudden? But that she is sitting with her friends and laughing with them and having, like, a lovely afternoon. And I'm like, girl, you really do not understand how important you are to them, do you? Because I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are just like, word, she's gone and y'all are after her. Well, I guess we better just take off and help her out, huh? Not all of them, because, you know, that takes a certain amount of guts. It takes a certain amount of, like, confidence that you'll be accepted back when things calm down. And not everybody's going to have that. But I feel like Nona is about to get a bit of a surprise at the support she will receive. That it seems like she just discounts entirely, even it doesn't even occur to her, you know? So this is when Nona gets interviewed by the abbess, and the abbess is like, your performance was a triumph, but I want you to think about what role awaits you in the wider world. Out there, you can't always win. Martin says, I think because Glass is all, be pleased for your friends who are with God, whereas Nona is like, fuck you, I want them here. Yeah, that's a real misstep on the abbess's part, is to try and, like, get her to see things from a spiritual perspective. Nona's got no time for that, man. She's way too practical. She has lived a hard life and that kind of thinking is just not something that comes naturally when you are worried about survival, like trying to look beyond survival. Just get out of here, you know? She says, our job is to teach you with failure as much as it is to teach you to win. We have failed to teach you about failure. I tell you this as I fear time is running out and simply hearing the lesson may have to stand in for being shown it. Nona opened her mouth to explain how she had learned that lesson when she failed Hessa, but her lips couldn't shape the words. So this is when she talks about Nona having the power at a young age that can corrupt people. And if you are in a position of authority, there's always the potential for you to take advantage of that, grow too used to your position, you know. And she says the church has the power and the Inquisition is intended to keep it from corruption. The red and the gray are a power, and among the high priest's tasks is to ensure those who direct them are not led astray from the righteous path. Each member of the red and the gray is a power in themselves, and it is my job to ensure they remember their strength is a gift intended for service. And of course, there are the ship hearts. Each a source of vast potential, but do they corrupt the ones who direct that strength? Nona said nothing. She didn't know the answers, saving that she was already tainted, and the stain upon her had his own name. And Abbess continues with, I want you to keep in mind, because difficult times are coming, that what we have taught you about staying your hand when you have the option to do harm, when you are very tempted to lash out, that is the right thing to do. And she says, our rules are all we have to stop everyone lashing out, each to their own sense of justice. Battles are better fought within the system, even when it seems broken. You're young, and I'm boring you. Run along, but don't forget what I told you. So, this is when we go to all of our ladies who are heading into the caves from the laundry room, because the 7-day trips into Verity, because the Inquisition is here, have been suspended. So they aren't able to do things the way that they had. And they're going into the caves in order, and I didn't totally understand this, they're going to go to the place that Hessa died because Nona believes that there is there has got to be a threadwork sort of clue at the site of her death that she can follow to find Yisht. It's an interesting thought that I wish I comprehended a little bit more what it was they were doing here, because I feel like it's not really stated until she gets in there. It might have been stated much earlier, and because of the way I read this book, you know, everything being so spaced out, I have forgotten it by now. So let's see. Although the distance from the novice cloister couldn't be more than 100 yards, it took nearly an hour of twisting passages and tight crawls until Jula stopped them. And she says, finally, Jula stops and says, I think that we're going to be right under it if we are able to get up through here. And there's this like fissure 3 yards above their heads that they have to throw a grappling hook through. And nobody can get this damn grappling hook to stick. It is clearly something, you know, with the stone being very, very smooth. And they're beginning to think that we're going to have to come back another day because the oil for their lanterns is low. And it's been getting even difficult to steal oil for the lanterns because the Inquisition being here has everything, including like the records for how supplies are being used, under very close scrutiny as compared to usual. But finally, Nona decides that she's going to use her flaw blades to climb. This is one of those scenes that it's like a combination of rad as hell and also incredibly stupid. And I don't mean stupid like the writing is stupid. I mean Nona is being stupid, and that's part of the point. Like, everybody watching her is sort of like, all right, girl, like, that's cool and all, but literally, what are you doing? And she manages it, but it's the sort of thing that, like, she'll only ever, I think, be able to pull this off this one time. She is using blades that are basically a part of her fingertips. Like, they're flaw blades, so they're not literal, but they are still kind of literal. Like, they have an effect on the physical world. And as such, the strain that she is putting on her fingers and hands and wrists and arms is enormous. I mean, all of her weight is resting on that. And she winds up in like horrible pain by the time she finally gets to the top of this thing. So she uses her flaw blades, gets up to the top, and they're asking her, how are you going to see anything up there? Like, it's totally dark. Nona says, give me a minute or two to feel around. And they are just down there like, what are you talking about? Feel around. And she tells Kiat to come into her eyes to help her see. This was something that she did, if you remember, when they were being chased by the Holothor. And she realizes when Kiat agrees and comes into her eyes this time, that she must have been so distracted by the Holothor that the fear of that completely shut out the pain of this experience, because now she doesn't have any such distraction and she cannot believe how bad it hurts. And like later on, Kiat comes even more forward. Like, he's not even fully, you know, in her eyes right here. And it's still so bad. And I found that kind of like nice, actually, because I appreciate when there is a price to be paid for a power that is very high value. It's the sort of thing, like, I feel like there can be a danger in fantasy where you make the ability to do certain things so easy and you give people bonuses for, you know, like, this could be considered like a bonus that she gets for Kiat. Having there be pain with it that prevents her from taking advantage of it all the time adds a nice level of difficulty to it so that it can't be abused and used at literally any time that she's in the dark. This isn't something that can become a second nature to the point where if later at one point she can't see in the dark, that I will consider that a plot hole. This is something that she has to actively agree to and choose and bear as it's happening, because it hurts so much that there's like an instinctive reaction to shove Kiat back again. And I need that, otherwise you really risk characters getting so overpowered that you're not going to, any conflict that they come up against, they're going to have this huge toolkit at their disposal that you won't feel the tension anymore. You'll just be like, oh, well, I know that they're going to deal with this and it'll be fine. So at this point, she uses the thread work to try and detect what's going on in this area and to see if there is a thread that she can follow to track down Yisht. And she almost doesn't see it. And I really love how this is written because it fools you. Nona's looking around for the threads. She doesn't find what she is looking for. And eventually it says, she's turning away, tells Kiat she hasn't found anything, is lamenting the fact that she thinks Hessa definitely would have found something if she were here. And then turns and it says she almost missed it. Something at the corner of her eye as she turned. Perhaps without Kiat, she would have seen nothing. What? She turned back, reaching. A single black thread, so thin she almost thought herself mistaken, even as her fingers tried to close around it. A black thread, leading from the spot where Hessa died, up along the shaft Yisht cut. And Nona is like, black threads? This isn't a thing that happens. And the way it's written, because it says she almost missed it, makes it seem like this is a great clue that is so subtle, Nona almost missed out on it, but thankfully was going slowly enough and paying enough attention that she saw it. And then we find out that this is a fucking trap. And so it's really like kind of mean how it's written as if, thank goodness. And then you find out that this is like her complete undoing. There's just something kind of like rude about it. So, yeah, I've got my eye on you. So Kiat is interested and is like moving forward even more into her eyes to take a look at it and is like, that's not a thread from a core stone. She says it feels like the ship heart, a feeling of the ship heart. And we wind up finding out that this is like tied to Joeli so that she can sense who it is who grabs it. And she's looking at the thread and it vanished into the rock. That's where Yisht went. The murderer had sealed the passage behind her as she went, her rock-working power amplified by the ship heart. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm like, is this the thread that like betrays her, or is there another one that had already gone off and this black one is something for her? Like, I don't know. I assumed that the black one was the trap. But, Martin says, no, it's not. So this string isn't the trap? The black one is her shadow. Oh, I didn't catch that. Really? Oh, yes. Now it's weird because I just finished reading this like a couple hours ago. Nona had hoped her disembodied shadow had killed the woman, a hope that had survived only until she returned to the convent. It's your shadow. That's why you found it when others could not. That's right. So there's another tripwire that she sets off, but the black one is the one that she can follow because she sent off her shadow, and that is. And she says, if that's my shadow's thread, why does it feel like the ship heart? And Kiat doesn't answer her, but I am super duper curious about that. And she wants to keep investigating it. And Kiat tells her, well, it's your thread. You can just take it with you. And she does. I'm wondering when she's going to like pull that out again and start to check that out. So then we go to Abbess Glass, chapter 18. I love Abbess Glass's chapters, guys, so much. She is just so interesting to me. Her sister sat around the convent table beneath the watchful eyes of Brother Pelter and 2 of his assistants. This fucking guy. I really hate him so much. So the first item on the agenda is the Gray reports that Sister Apple has handed over to Brother Pelter. And we know that the ciphers that they're like, because everything is encoded, are meant to be incredibly tedious and laborious to work out, so that it will take ages for them to even recognize that there is anything particularly wrong. Apple had for years been producing a copy of each report, altering, excising, and sanitizing. The encryption she used differed from that employed on the true reports, and the ciphers had been designed to be devilishly time-consuming to apply. Glass wished Pelter and his subordinates much joy of it. So this is when fucking Sister Wheel says heresy. Sister Wheel is the one that Abbess Glass looks at because she expects Sister Wheel to have something to say. And Brother Pelter says heresy. This is one of those moments that you just want to slap and shake a person. Because basically what he's doing is like, oh, there's just, an overall atmosphere. He has nothing substantial and he knows it. But he's trying to basically put everyone on notice that if they step at all out of line, they will be giving him the exact ammunition that he is looking for already. And there will be no lenience here at all. And it is just so gross whenever there is a person who is like, well, I know something's up, but I don't know how. It's just a feeling. Like, because they are looking for a reason to oppress and persecute people. Just, you know what? Get your fucking evidence or get the fuck out of here. All right, Brother Pelter? I love her. Hearsay and heresy, though they may sound similar, are very different things, Brother Pelter. Oh, I love her. So he says the worst example has been in spirit class, which is Sister Wheel's class. And Glass is like, word? Like she just, if he was going to take issue with any class, that was the last one she expected. And he says there have been some questionable choices in the selection of saints to be studied. Now, Martin, if you are available, you may remind me, because he talks about David, one of the saints that someone's studying. And I remember that I mentioned, I remember reading about that, but I do not remember exactly what the deal is with David. But yeah, Abbess Glass is like, because he mentions David, like, that's all he needs to say and his case is made. And Abbess Glass has to be like, I don't know who that can anybody fill me the fuck in, please? I don't know what you're talking about. And when Sister Wheel tries, right, thank you. Martin says he explored cities from the missing. Basically, if you are at all involved with, because the missing, and covering up what's going on with them appears to be a main function of the church. So yeah, that's frowned upon. I am dying to know what happened to them. They've got to still be around, right? They're just hiding because they're not idiots. And Sister Wheel protests that, there are no Dark Ages books in her library. And Pelter is like, I have news for you. Your library isn't the only place to get books in this convent. So, and then they get interrupted. And it's Sister Pale who says there's a novice who has important information for the table and says that it can't wait. I adore that Sister Pan and Abbess Glass are like, fuck that, it can wait. I don't fucking care. And Pale says she has Watcher Eris with her, Abbess. He wants Brother Pelter to hear her. Which is just exactly what needs to be said to undermine Abbess Glass. If you appeal to the fucking Inquisition, they take precedence. And we find out later that Abbess Glass fucking worked for them. Which, want to know more about that, I'm not going to lie. And in comes goddamn Joeli. I love Glass looking at her and knowing that this bitch is dying to tell them what the fuck is going on, but is also making a big show about, oh, should I say anything? No, I mustn't. I don't want to tell him, but it's so important. Shut up and fucking say it, you fucking jag. Ugh, I hate her so much. I really wish that Nona had killed her, and Nona wishes it too, but like, I really want her to die, like, just a horrible death. Just saying. And Abbess Glass immediately zeroes in on the fact that Joeli is like here not because she knows about some intruders that are fucking with the works. This bitch is here again to tell tales on other students, other novices. And Glass kind of calls her out, trying to be like, I know that you have some actual shit to tell us that matters, and not just you and this little feud that you've got going again. And she tries to will Joeli to shut the fuck up and not say anything. But it does not work. And what I love about the way this is written is the acknowledgement of exactly who Joeli is and why it doesn't work on her. It says, on almost any novice, Glass's stare might have had its desired effect, but Joeli, full of earned grievance, natural spite, and the confidence that a rich family engenders, shrugged it off. If that isn't the truest thing, a combination. I love the specificity of that description. Natural spite, but also earned grievance. It's a terrible combination when somebody hates others and likes tormenting them for the fun of it, and they get genuine ammunition, or they get a genuine reason to hate a person that they would have just hated anyway, free of charge, but now they've got something to hold up and be like, this is why I hate them. That is a real, that's a dry pile of brush, that spite. And then something actually happening is flint to tinder. And I just really enjoy it being said that not only her grievance, but also like the privilege that she grew up with, and that infection that will have on your personality, because it just does. Having privilege will fuck you up in terms of personality. It's unavoidable. It just does. And all of us are fucked up to a degree by it. Our privilege, we all have different types, but it has an effect on the way you see the world and the way you react to things. And when you are rich and have been sort of untouchable, I am not surprised this is the way you handle shit, So Joeli, she is, it turns out, really very much in the Inquisition's pocket here, because she goes to great lengths to emphasize that Abbess Glass said if anybody was going to the caves again, they would be banished from the convent. And she makes sure to say that specifically and point it out and remind Abbess Glass everything in front of Brother Pelter. And Abbess Glass is watching it and is just like, oh, motherfucker. Like, she's realizing too late that a trap has been set. Nona walked right into it. She has kind of walked into it herself. And I love her, like, paying attention to Brother Pelter and him being like, all kinds of formal with Joeli, like he doesn't know who she is. But Abbess Glass is like, I know that you were the priest for her family. You know her, and you know her father quite well. So this little facade of like, oh, I hardly know you, and I'm sure I don't know whether to believe your word. It's all, they're fucking working together, basically, you know? It's just I really liked this moment and her like sort of resignation as she realizes that shit is out of her hands. Finally, she has been trying to shift the tide subtly as the opportunities presented themselves, feeling the whole time that yes, there was a deadline coming, that time was running out, but she still had time. You know, there was a feeling of like, which is what happens whenever you know things are about to get bad. You always think you have a little more time before they really get bad. And I fucking love that, he tries to be like, oh, so nobody thought that they would mention, you know, that Nona is the, let's see, I helped Sister Pan place the trip threads and several of them are attuned to me. And Sister Pelter says, and Sister Pan, did you not know of this too? I did, Sister Pan replied testily, but you didn't think fit to mention it at table? Abbess Glass beat Sister Pan to a reply, well aware that her Mistress Path had been quite capable of leveling buildings in her prime, and might still be able to turn an impertinent monk inside out. I really, really want to see that. Okay? Just saying. I just want to see her level a building and turn an impertinent monk inside out. I'm just saying I would like it. And I would be obliged if that would happen right the fuck now to this particular man, because I hate him. And then he does well, there's no bad times to speak against heresy because he interrupted them all to fucking talk about it. Just that kind of manipulation in a conversation where you make it that somebody else who like tells you maybe you shouldn't have fucking interrupted. Then you turn it into, oh, so you don't want me talking about heresy? Interesting. Do you like heresy? Is that what this is? Like, oh God, I have so little patience for that kind of garbage. I hate it so much. It's so gaslighty and so manipulative and so dishonest, you know? So Abbess Glass tries at this point to be like, look, when I said that I would banish a novice, it was right after somebody down there had died. And I was saying what I needed to make sure that other people didn't get hurt. And the overall impression here is that she's trying to be like, I'm not going to stick to that though, because the situation has changed. And of course, unsurprisingly, Pelter is like, are you fucking kidding me? We have rules. And he says, flexibility is a toxin, the ally of heresy. It's flexibility that allowed this child to get hold of unsuitable histories in the first place. Rules must be iron. Decisions must be kept to. Decrees obeyed. Flexibility is a toxin. God, I hate her. Or I hate him. So Glass then says maybe we can keep her as like, basically she wants to turn Nona into a Hagrid and have her be like a groundskeeper. And the Inquisitor is like, that's not what you said. You said banished, and that's not banished. Sister Pan says they are at an impasse, and Brother Pelter says no impasse. We drown the child, then throw her body off the cliff. How the fuck did we go from banishment to drowning and then throwing her off a cliff? I don't understand what just happened there. And I'll be honest, because I was listening to the audiobook of this, and I was just like, did I miss something? Like, we accelerated so quickly from simply we're kicking her out of the convent. That's how I interpreted banishment. To then we are executing her. That I don't know what to think. Like how this... it just escalated really quickly. That's all I'm saying. So, Sister Kettle goes to Nona and tells her, girl, you're in danger. You need to get your fucking coat on, get your boots on, and we are going to leave. Get everything that you need to go on a journey because we're leaving in 2 minutes. Joeli immediately says there's a problem. I will help. She's in the middle of doing push-ups, by the way. I just want to be Joeli so bad, except I don't want to do any of that actual work. Kettle tells her, Tarkax is here to escort you to Sergel's palace, so you are not going to be able to help with jack shit. And Nona is in the middle of like getting ready and gets distracted by this and says, Zoli's one of us now. And I'm like, Nona, sweetie, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're not even one of you now. Like, you're not here to stand up for anybody else. You need to get the fuck out. So they head out. Darla asks where they're going. Kettle's just like, we're going somewhere that I'm not telling you about, and you are not going to tell anybody that I was even here. There are worse things than the Inquisition. Consider that. And Nona asks whether she can say goodbye. And Kettle says, she's like starting to try and engage her on this conversation. And then they hear somebody coming and they like duck into the darkness and hide for a second. And Kettle explains as they're hiding to Nona what happened. That there were some trip threads in that cave. And later on, Nona is just like, I cannot believe I fucking fell for that. I am an idiot. And she's like mad at Joeli, but she's also angry at herself. And she can't even hold Joeli entirely responsible because she's just like, her plan wouldn't have worked if I wasn't a fucking moron. So it's my fault for being a fucking moron. Maybe next time, don't act like a fucking moron and you won't fall for this shit again. Which, you know what? I guess that's the right way to direct your anger, because directing it at Joeli isn't going to be super useful at this point. But also, fuck Joeli and I hate her. So yeah, you can kill her and that's fine. So, over by the scriptorium, Kettle murmured, Nona saw a fifth watcher there, tight against the corner of the building. Her head turned towards the spot where Kettle's noisemaker had landed. Move slowly, keep close. If I tell you to run, then run. Get off the rock, don't come back. And Nona is like, I need to say goodbye to everybody. And the abbess, like, can't she step in? And Kettle has to be like, girl, oh my God. You are so behind the times. The abbess isn't in charge anymore, okay? If you stay here, you'll die. If you are able to change your eyes back, do that. Change your name, if you can do that. Everything about you, please hide it. And then she says, they're after me too, Nona. Everything is falling apart. Nona says, we can kill them. I've killed more men than those 9 all by myself. But Kettle's like, that 9, that's not the end of it. They are connected to a bigger body. They're part of the church. They're all joined. We can't fight them and beat just them and be done. That's not how this works. And this is when she says, what do you think Abbess Glass did before she came to Sweet Mercy? She ran the Inquisition. High Inquisitor Shella Yamal. That was before her son died. I am absolutely dying to know what the fuck happened with her kid. Because it feels like something turned a fucking corner. And this changed everything. And I don't know what to think about this. I mean, I got nothing. I really don't. I love Abbess Glass as a character so bad. And this sort of like history and getting this like little teaser. Oh, this is tasty. This is a yummy morsel and I want more of it. It's like an amuse-bouche. Gimme. Abbess Glass. She's my MVP. So Kettle says, "You will always be my sister. I'm going to try and make a shadow bond between us." Nona's like, "Girl, I lost my shadow. It's not gonna work." And she says, "And if you need me, you could call. Let's try." Nona attempted a smile. She couldn't twist her face right, though. Kettle took Nona's hand and interlaced their fingers into a tight grip. And Kettle, they like are trying to make this thing happen. Kettle says it's not working. Nona stared until her eyes burned and the path sliced through the blackness everywhere at once, infinite, complex, filling the space, defining the surfaces, shaping Kettle from nothing with a multitude of glowing veins, a light that no darkness could touch. Nona stared harder still, seeing past the path's brightness to the shining shroud of threads whispering through everything, strands freed from the unity of the path. It's not working. Kettle tried to release Nona's hand, but Nona's gripped back with all of her strength. A warmth arose around her. The focus approaching. They must have been locked in this embrace for hours. Anyone could find them. Inquisitors must be on their trail by now. Nona pushed away the sudden panic. The focus moon swept away Kettle's shadows, and the gray sister cried out as if scalded. Nona wouldn't let her pull free. She remembered another focus, the heat bathing her and Hessa on the scriptorium steps on the night Hessa had thread-bound them both. It will work. Nona seized the threads around her wrists and Kettle's without delicacy, taking all of them together, bundled in her left hand. She made a fist and squeezed as hard as she could, and in that moment the focus moon blazed so bright it took the world away. And basically, the both of them like kind of faint a little bit. They're both like, Nona wakes up from the ground and Kettle is like on her knees. And Kettle's like, "What in the fuck was that? What did you just do to me?" And Nona's like, "I thread bound us. Other than that, I don't know. Because that didn't happen when Hessa did this." And Kettle's like, "But if only two quantals can thread bind, and you have to share that blood." And Nona's like, "Well, we're both Hunska. We share that blood." And before they can continue this conversation, they get interrupted by the people hunting for them. I am extremely curious how this is going to manifest. Because it feels like whatever Nona did here is different than what Hessa did somehow. And I wonder what that's going to look like. So Kettle tells Nona that she will delay and distract the people after them. And that Nona has to be really fucking fast and to run. Moments later, Nona was jogging along a rough track toward the Verity Road, everything she owned in a sack bouncing on her back, everyone she knew, everything she cared about retreating behind her. So about an hour later, she has been like flat out sprinting most of the time. She finally stops and she just sobs. She just sobs for a while because she's just like, finally she found a place with friends that was safe, with food, people who cared about her, and now she's having to fucking abandon it. And at first, she's thinking that, or it's really Kiat who's like, "You should have killed Joeli, like I said." And her initial reaction is, "Yeah, maybe I fucking should have." But a little later, she's like, "Nah, this wasn't Joeli, this was my goddamn fault." So then, into chapter 20, we have Nona on the run. And she is trying to figure out how she's going to survive out here by herself. She's had minimal training. And the training she's had has been under controlled circumstances, not out here in the wild. So like just trying to light a fire is pretty much beyond her until she decides to like reach into the threads onto the path to pull power from that in order to start a fire. But that's not something that she's going to be able to do all the time. I wouldn't think anyway. So she's having a hard time. So eventually, and I mentioned already like the path, because she steals a chicken and she doesn't have a way to cook it. And she's been feeling, it says all day she's had the feeling she was being followed, but she was unused to such open spaces and it was likely just nerves. And I really like that detail because it could be that she's being followed. And I suspect there is somebody from school also, but we do find out later that the child taker, is following her. So it could just be about him. But this whole bit, she's looking at her hands and thinking about the way that fortune tellers in her village used to work, and about following threads and the way that people can do that even with like animal entrails and stuff. And she's wondering how that works because somehow they found her in her village and almost got right to her front fucking steps. And Nona's like, so obviously this is doable, but I have no idea how they pulled this off. Her shadow's thread didn't run through the forest like a trail of string unwound behind a cautious explorer. Instead, like every other thread, it led off at curious angles to the world, requiring steps that no feet of blood and bone could take if it was to be followed. If she were still at Sweet Mercy, Nona would have asked Sister Pan and been taught the techniques required. So I like that also, that this thread isn't just like a straight line on a path that she can follow. It's going to be a lot trickier than that. So then we have the fire that she pulls from the path, and it like nearly kills her. She yanks way too much power out, realizes that she has pulled out more than she can handle, and has to throw it into a nearby tree in order to get it out of her before she herself just basically hemorrhages and explodes. And it sort of goes off like a bomb. And she lays there for a minute, and like when she finally sits up, all of the trees, like the tree itself that she threw the power at, is gone. And the trees around it are just blackened trunks. Further back in the area into which Nona had been thrown, the forest burned in dozens of spots where blazing fragments had peppered both branches and undergrowth. And Kia is like, dude, oh my God, what did you do? So I assume that grabbing power from the path affected Kia a little bit. So the next day she winds up on the road with this older woman, Galabeth, who owns a really good whetstone. And this is an interesting thing. It turns out to be a piece of like the missing. It's something that Kia recognizes. And she mentions that it's so unusual. It's able to sharpen things that you would never imagine could be sharpened by a whetstone. And she says that like this and this alone is basically keeping her fed and afloat. It's interesting that she chooses to tell Nona this when it's so valuable to her. Like, she probably should keep this to herself, and it does occur to Nona to steal it. Well, it occurs to Kia. But, yeah, this is, Nona is talking to Kia in her head. And she says, if it's shipbone or arcbone, then it's not from the missing. You don't know anything. You're too young to remember last year. Kiat made a rush for her hand. Nona held him back. And unless you start making sense, I have to assume you're too old to remember yesterday. And finally, Kiat gets real irritated and pulls back. So I'm curious about that also, and if we're going to see Galabeth again, or Galabeth. And then we have Nona getting home. And as she's heading home, and by home, I mean her old village, Kiat's saying, nobody's even chasing you. This has been way too easy. What's going on? They're supposed to be like nipping at your heels right now. And it doesn't seem like there's anybody after you. And she goes to the crest of the hill and looks down at her village and thinks, I must have made a mistake. It must be over the next hill. And as she's looking and realizes it's fucking gone, Kiat yells for her to turn around. And she does with that crazy speed that she gets from her Hunska blood and manages to stop this, the missile held her focus, thin as a nail, long as a hand, flighted, spinning, some kind of disc around the shaft an inch back from the tip, as if the bolt had pierced a copper penny on its way through the air. Somewhere back behind it, a blurred figure stood in the roadway. And she reaches up with her hand. Nona turned the tip of the flaw blade extending from her index finger, presenting the flat and angled side to the invisible blade to the bolt. Deflected, the bolt carried on, its path slanting upwards. It tore into the material of her range coat a thumb's width above her skin and came to a jolting halt there, stopping by the ridge set an inch behind the point. So she looks up and it's Giljon, and Giljon is like, fuck. I knew I had one shot. I knew it. I thought I was going to get you. I missed. I can't believe it. And he's like kind of trying to be graceful about it. Like, you know what? Fair enough. You win. I'm not even mad about it. You really are fast as fuck. And Nona is so hurt by this. Like, it's a combination of Giljon being the one after her and being in the remains of her village, which it says at one point that ruins were a little bit too generous a word, more like traces. Everything about her village is just fucking gone. And it turns out that they basically came to the village after she took out some of Sherzal's men who were there to get her, that basically the place got leveled because of Nona. And it's just another thing for her to feel guilty and shitty about, even though she had no control over any of this. And as for Giljon, he is in his cage that he was using for children and is very resentful of it and has been poisoned a little bit because Nona stabbed him with the arrow he was going to use on her with this like mixture that ruins his concentration and makes him forget that he's said things already, which is kind of amusing. And he says that that there is 100, I can't remember the name of the reward, sovereigns, 100 gold sovereigns for Nona that they're offering as a reward. And she is staggered, as it says, by that amount, because an entire cage of kids wouldn't even bring him one sovereign. And she can't believe that that is how much they are offering for her. And Giljon's like, dude, I could not resist that. I'm sorry. That is way too much money for me to say no to. So at this point, Kia is in her head being like, you need to fucking kill this guy. He bad. He bad news. He's tried to fucking sell you once already. Just do it. She leaves him in the cage, but does not kill him. And she takes the purse that he had. It says, Nona Benton scooped up one of the sections of bar, a wooden disc. She took the child taker's purse from her pocket and put the disc in it as if it were an oversized coin. She tossed the purse into the cage. Why? I don't understand this. Why didn't she just take the money? I don't really understand. Like, she's leaving him alive, so that's cool. But I don't understand what the deal is with taking his purse and putting this piece in it and then handing it back. Like, I don't really get that. But, you know, maybe I'm just missing something there. And then we have the last very short chapter where Abbess Glass is talking to Sister Apple about what's going on with Kettle. Apple is freaking out about Kettle. Glass is trying to, like, talk to her about what's going on with, you know, Nona being involved. But it's just... Sister Apple is having trouble focusing on the issue at hand because of her being so distraught over her partner being missing and hunted, you know? So Sister Tallow basically is like, Abbess, you need to do something because this guy is going to bring you down. And if he can't find something real to do it with, he'll invent something and he doesn't care. And Abbess Glass, it's like, look, I'm watching The Watchers. I'm going to figure this out. But it basically comes down to, Apple says, spend too long watching the long game and the short game will kill you, which I did like that line also. She's getting some good lines. And we have Joeli stepping out of the shadows and Glass watching her and seeing Brother Pelter, Sister Rael, and Novice Joeli all standing together talking to one another. I know that Sister Rael has been a fucking nightmare, but I didn't expect her to be like this corrupted. And I am really hoping that she gets hers eventually. And Apple tells the Abbess that Kettle left a ciphered note without any details. And essentially they sit there watching, trying to figure out what it is that Pelter is going to try and assemble with his little cronies as a case against the Abbess. And that's pretty much where the chapter ends, is them being like, yeah, we know he's trying to fuck some shit up. We don't know what it is yet, though. So we're going to be try to be prepared for everything. But who knows? And yeah, that's it. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you very much to Martin for commissioning this episode, and thank you to everybody who is listening. I am really, like, so curious about where this book is going to go because, you know, I thought at the end of the last book that was going to be the end of Nona at Sweet Mercy. And she has been kicked out here, but I'm still not totally sure if this is the end of her as Sweet Mercy. So I guess we'll see. But the next episode isn't until June 9th. So it's over a month away. And then after that, July 3rd. So it's a month space between each of the sections I'm reading. So it's going to be a while. But we shall see. We shall see what we see. But thank you again, Martin, very much. And I hope you guys are enjoying it. I will see you again in a month with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.